Popeye, was raschelt im Stroh? Das sind die liebe Gänschen, die haben keine Schuh. Der Schuster hat Leder, keine Leisten dazu.
Funding is provided by the North Dakota Council on the Arts, which receives funding from the state legislature and the National Endowment for the Arts. The North Dakota Humanities Council, a nonprofit, independent state partner of the National Endowment for the Humanities. Roger and Bernadine Lang-Kuhn. Clarence and Marilyn Bauman. Thomas and Janice Huber-Stengel. Michael M. Miller. The Germans from Russia Heritage Society, and the members of Prairie Public Television.
Germans from Russia are a very musical people. They took with them, of course, this great corpus of religious music, but that had the underpinning and the support not only of the language, the High German language, but also of the church. And they were able to not only use it in the Russia steppes, but also to bring it with them in their baggage when they came to the United States.
During the 18th and early 19th centuries, many German-speaking peoples were invited by Russian rulers to settle and develop their newly acquired Russian steppes. They established major German settlements along the Volga River to the north and the Black Sea coast to the south. Accepting the 1763 invitation of Catherine the Great and of her grandson Alexander I in 1804, Germans migrated by the thousands into these new Russian lands. Eventually, however, large numbers of both groups migrated yet again, this time to North and South America. Yet throughout all their travels, these Germans, now Germans from Russia, managed to maintain their traditional religious music, their lullabies and folk songs, their vocal and instrumental music alike.
The Volga immigrants from Germany to Russia started about 1766. They took along with them the sort of narrow focus that the folks in Germany had at that time. The United States had not yet developed. The French Revolution had not taken place yet. And so they were, I believe, much more prone to be subject to the authorities from above. And it made a very definite difference, I believe, in the Weltanschauung, the worldview of these two great groups.
In the Volga areas, people came from the same village and settled in the same village in the Volga area, and so we have people from a unified tradition. When you get to the Black Sea area, that was not the same. People simply joined wagon trains and they came from all sorts of small villages. And so once they arrived in the Black Sea area and settled, they were living in a village with people from distinctly different traditions. So there was a lot of compromise and adjustment that had to take place in South Russia during those period of times.
Both the Volga and Black Sea Germans brought with them their musical traditions, including ancient hymns such as Christus ist erstanden, with a text and melody dating back to the 12th century and shown here in a Lutheran hymnal of 1533.
Es waren zwei Königskinder, die hatten
In the case of hymns and folk songs, different performers often use different melodies, as well as sometimes different texts.
Arme, das Wasser war viel zu tief.
Es waren zwei Königskinder, sie hatten einander so lieb. Sie kennten zusammen nicht kamen, das Wasser war viel zu tief. Das Wasser war viel zu tief.
Through the 19th century, most printed hymnals included only the words to the hymns themselves, though the songbooks did suggest a melody for the text. Because the meter or scansion of a text is compatible with many melodies, singing groups could choose whatever melody they preferred. In Russia, these new German colonists were settled in separate villages based upon their religious affiliation: Catholics, Mennonites, and Hutterites. All other Protestants, including Lutherans, Calvinistic Reformed, and Pietists, were grouped together. The Russian crown granted these people special privileges, including the right to retain their own language, their schools and churches, as well as an exemption from serving in the Russian military. This Hutterite choir sings in a style similar to that of the early Calvinistic Reformed tradition. Prior to these German migrations, the Calvinistic Reformed allowed only the singing of psalms, unaccompanied and in unison. As the Pietist movement evolved in German lands of the 18th century, it emphasized the private devotions of the lay people and a personal relationship with God. Hymns like Jesu geh voran by Nicholas von Zinzendorf, and hymns by other authors like Philipp Friedrich Hiller reflected these Pietist ideas. They were used in lay-led brotherhood meetings, or Stunden, as well as regular services. Many of these hymns are still in use today. Photos and archival records confirm that German settlers in Russia eventually established church choirs and that quality pipe organs were installed in many of the German churches. Some new compositions of the 19th century were based upon older traditions. The practice of playing an organ prelude that led into the singing of a chorale by the congregation dates back to 17th century Germany. This example was included in a collection published in Germany in 1840. It was part of the music library of Johannes Bonekemper, pastor at Rohrbach, South Russia, for 24 years. Today, it survives in the United States, where it was part of the estate of his son Karl Bonekemper, who ended his career as a pastor in southeastern South Dakota. Mennonites did not maintain a unique repertory of hymns. Rather, they assimilated the music of other Protestants. In Russia, it was primarily the hymnody of the Lutherans and Pietists. However, the Mennonites are particularly well known for their excellent tradition of singing by men's choruses. On the other hand, as in Russia, the Hutterites retained their tradition of singing unaccompanied German hymns. They sing in unison during the daily German-language religious services. This choir directs itself and performs for special occasions outside of church services and sings many of its hymns in two parts. It is this unique, open, hollow sound that characterizes the singing of the older Germans from Russia.
Heute scheid ich, heute wandr ich, keine Seele weint mich.
Beginning in the 1870s, the special privileges of these German colonists, including exemption from serving in the military, were rescinded. That, combined with a shortage of available land for their growing population, prompted many of them to emigrate to North and South America.
Auf dem Bachstrom hängen Weiden. When people had to leave their homeland, or if a soldier had to go into the army, our people gathered together and they always sang this sad song. Muss nun unsere Heimat meiden, tief im Herzen tut mir's weh.
Jetzt ist die Zeit und Stunde da, wir seien's nach Amerika. Der Wagen steht schönster
Life for the Germans from Russia on the American prairies was very different from the life they lived and left behind in old Russia. There, they had lived in villages surrounded by their farmland, so community life was basic to their existence. In contrast, the American Homestead Act required people to live and remain on their actual homestead land in isolation from one another for 5 years. The most common opportunity for these homesteaders to see one another in the early years was at their church services. So the church served as a spiritual support and also as a critical social outlet. It also allowed the settlers to keep their religious musical traditions alive.
At confirmation, we sang So nimm denn meine Hände. That was a must. It was sung either with an organ or a cappella, but that was always done.
Many of the hymns, such as So nimm denn meine Hände, were in fact written or first published in the 19th century and not likely known in Russia until the period around the turn of the 20th century. Reed organs, also known as pump organs, were common in churches and homes in the early 20th century. This typical church-style pump organ was purchased for $94.40 in 1907.
It was a really, old pedal organ. It wasn't too fancy or too, it was just a cheaper organ. And the organists were all, just probably trained themselves, how to play. And
my mother's father, for example, was the church organist. He played by ear. He also sang in the choir. Actually, he did not accompany the choir since he couldn't read music.
There are many pictures of instrumental bands in Russian villages and in settlements in the United States. The tradition of trombone choirs in German lands goes back to the 17th century. By the second half of the 19th century, so-called brass bands included clarinets. Beginning in 1881, Johannes Kulo published several collections of hymns and folk songs arranged for these groups.
At Christmas time, of course, we did the standard songs. We did Stille Nacht, we did O du Fröhliche. Welchen Jubel, welchen Freude, still, 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 ihr Kinderlein kommet.
I very clearly remember my mother, who played by ear, sitting at the piano and playing German hymns and singing. She did this a lot.
I was 14 when we moved to town. I would say we had another 10 years of a German service. Every Sunday we had English at 9 o'clock and German service at 11. And it probably was equally attended at that time.
Well, I think the all-time favorite song of the German-Russian has to be Gott ist die Liebe. Gott ist die Liebe, lass mich erlesen, Gott ist die Liebe, lebt auch mich. Drum sag ich noch einmal, Gott ist die Liebe, Gott ist die Liebe, liebt auch mich. That has to be the favorite. It's the one that has survived the longest, you know, even into the generations who no longer speak the German, they can still sing Gott ist die Liebe because Grandma taught them.
Gott ist die Liebe was written by August Rische and published by 1860. Although many Germans from Russia in the United States assume that their ancestors sang this hymn in Russia, none of the hymnals published in Russia from 1862 to 1898 contained it. All available evidence suggests that an American publication that contained the hymn was republished in Germany and became available in Russia by 1901. The first known Russian publication of this hymn is Weinandt's Gemeinschaftslieder from Saratov in 1903. That collection was republished many times in Russia, the United States, Germany, and Argentina. Stille Nacht has a similar history, appearing in American hymnals as early as 1871, but apparently not found in Russia before the same 1903 hymnal compiled by Weinandt.
When a person was confirmed in the old country, as they say, among their gifts would be their first songbook that they were to bring to the services for their own personal use.
This hymnal was received by Frederick Buechler when he was confirmed at the Lutheran Church in Neuglickstal, near Hoffnungstal, Russia. The tradition continued in the United States, where an individual received this Lutheran hymnal when he was confirmed. In addition to Lutherans, separate Reformed, Baptist, and Seventh-day Adventist congregations were also established in Russia. However, when they arrived in North America, these Protestant groups found a confusing array of denominations. It was mostly the individual and local activity by zealous missionaries which influenced the religious affiliation of the newly arrived immigrants.
My family had all been part of the evangelical church. If we want to go further back into their days in Russia, it was an evangelical Lutheran. When they came here, there was a strong movement of evangelical pastors. A lot of the old preachers coming out of Germany had started their circuit ministries here in the prairies, and so we just became evangelicals.
O dienet dem Herrn in dem Schmöge.
This hymnal, the Gebeten Danklieder, is really the book that I learned to read German from.
In dem Schmöge der Heiligkeit, Ehre sei dem Vater vor Gnade und Wahrheit, seid fröhlich alle Lande, und holde geht Jehova, oh glory, Halleluja, Halleluja, Halleluja. Komm, komm zu seinem Tempel und singen seinem Ruhm.
The music in our evangelical church was, I think, almost what you would classify white gospel, the revivalist kinds of songs. They had a very good swing to them. They had a good basic 4-part harmony, repetitive melody lines, very easy to learn and pick up.
During and after World War II, most of the Germans who remained in Russia were exiled to Siberia and the Urals. Since religious services were forbidden at that time in Russia, the settlers compiled their own handwritten collections of hymn and folk song texts to use in their private homes.
You couldn't keep their spirit down, even without books. What they would do, as soon as they had a scrap of paper, they would gather around and they would start writing from memory. And if someone would forget a line or so, naturally, they just go to the next room, and the next thing you know, they would have a whole song constructed, done from memory.
The music of the Catholic Church was traditionally in Latin. However, German hymns were also used, though their use is difficult to document.
A lot of the church music that we had that I remember was done in German, especially special occasions were almost all done in German. Maria an benedictio.
The songs in between, like at communion or the end song, was in German, usually Große Gott, Maria zu lieben, Sei gegrüßt, o Jungfrau Rei. Those songs I remember where they sang them.
For most religious denominations, special funeral songs were common at the cemetery.
When somebody was buried, they followed the casket to the cemetery. They walked all the way to the cemetery, and almost all the people in the village followed. And while they prayed and sang while they were walking to the cemetery. And then at the cemetery they sang Das Schicksal will keiner verschonen. That was a special song when people had died.
Das Schicksal wird keine verschonen.
Funerals were always all done in German, regardless. They'd do the prayers in church in Latin, but the rest of the hymns were all German hymns.
Wo findet die Seele die Heimat, die Ruhe? At the cemetery, we always did Wo findet die Seele die Heimat, die Ruhe? Again, a cappella. But it was beautiful out there.
With the funeral music, I remember the German song for some of the elderly that was sung, So nimm denn meine Hände.
Heia, Popeye, was raschelt im Stroh? Das sind die liebe Gänschen, die haben keine Schuh. Der Schuster hat Leder, keine Leisten dazu. Drum geht der Michel barfuß und hat keine Schuh. Alle unsere Täubchen.
As in most cultures, lullabies and children's songs are part of German-Russian tradition.
Clip. My mother sang all kinds of songs. She sang folk songs, she sang to the baby, she sang lullabies. She performed in front of us to make us happy. Clip, clap, they're flying all away. And then she says, all our little ducks are swimming on the pond. They put their head in the water and stick their tails up. Schwänzchen in die Hay.
We learned a song in school that I remembered very well. It was called My Mutter bakt Kichle, My Mother Baked Cookies. The song was so ingrained in my head, I've never forgotten it, but it goes, My Mutter bakt Kichle, sie backt sie so fein, sie stillt's mir uns Kinderla und lasst mich nicht nei. Sie gibt mir a Brugge zum Tiener Lugge, kabib, kabib, da Brugge fress ich.
Ich bin der Dr. Eisenbart, wieder, wie bum, bum.
The research that's been done about folk music in Russia talks a lot about the young men in the evening when they had some free time getting together on the streets and singing folk songs.
They sang out on the fields, they sang at home, they sang all over.
Those little songs that were preserved over many generations, going back to Germany and probably other places even before that. And they were true folk song because they were anonymous, they were carried on in the oral tradition, they usually were sung a cappella, no musical accompaniment was needed. Also, when these were sung as a group, there was a lead singer. We would call this individual the foresanger. This person would set the melody, begin the song, and the others would sort of chime in. True folk singing.
But every time our people gathered in the evenings after a hard days of work, they started out singing. And of course, they always picked a lead singer, and that was my mother.
My grandmother, Maria Wohn, lives in Germany, and she's perhaps the best known Volga German folk singer. She's 96 now, but she continues to be active, and she continues to sing at every opportunity. Her songs comprise more than 300 in total that she knows by memory.
If there's a word for German Russian singing, the Dusch singing or other folk singing, it's soulful.
The Volga Germans went through many difficult times, but through all those difficult times, perhaps one of the most difficult things for them to withstand was separation.
Es waren zwei
Die
Königskinder.
Königskinder is one of the most beloved and well-known songs, and it deals with separation.
Zusammen konnten sie nicht kommen, das Wasser war viel zu tief. Zusammen konnten
Among the German-Russian Protestants, both Black Sea and Volga, there was a greater emphasis on the church music. And I think part of this may be because of the pietistic movements that would sweep through the Volga colonies and the Black Sea colonies. At times, there were ministers who said folk song and folk music is wrong. In the Catholic settlements, that really never happened. The church music was there, but there was a time and place for the church music. But there was a time and place for the folk music and the music of fun and pure enjoyment.
Das hört eine falsche Nonne, sie tat, als wenn sie schlief. Sie tut die Kerzen ausblasen, der Jüngling ertrank so tief. Sie tut die Kerzen ausblasen, der Jüngling ertrank es so tief.
I remember my dad having a pump organ, and in the evenings he would play that pump organ, and pretty soon he had my brother and myself standing beside the organ, and we had to sing along. And we sang, the first song I remember was Im Frühjahr. Im Frühjahr, that means in the springtime. Bei Zeiten mit dem Springen wohl hinaus auf das Feld. Und da hab ich die herrlichste Zeiten, weil's Segelfangen mir gar so gefällt. Und da hab ich die herrlichste Zeiten. Drum sag ich noch einmal,
The Catholics liked to gather together to sing on what they call their Names Day celebration. They seemed to feel it was more important to honor the saint after whom they were named than to celebrate their actual birthday.
Well, Names Day traditions and Names Day celebrations were common among the Germans from Russia, both Black Sea German and Volga German, and particularly among the Catholics. On that particular day, let's say it was the Names Day celebration for St. John, all of the individuals named John would get together, preferably at somebody's house, and somebody would usually host this. And you would take a bright ribbon, tie it around their arm, you would toast them with a shot, and then you would sing. And sometimes you would dance if you had a musician or two, and you just had a really good celebration.
Oh, Susanna, ist das Leben doch so schön. Oh, Susanna, wie schmeckt das Bier so schön.
Prost, Prost, Prost.
Ich mein, es wäre besser, schenke mal. Some of the fun songs was Ich mein, es wäre besser.
That's good stuff.
Of course, it's a drinking song. Ich mein, es wäre besser, schenke mal ein Sei. I think it would be better, serve us a drink, schenke mal ein Sei. And that is kind of a Names Day song.
Da blaves nit, hör dich mein Schätzele nit, hör blaves nit, da blaves nit, hör dich das nit.
Oh, igner alte Schnapsenbalzer, wir täten so gerne eins tanzen. Oh, igner alte Schnapsenbalzer, wir täten so gern eins tanzen. Auf einem schönen Predigen mit allen Mädchen, heise, heise, hupsa, sabi, uns geht's lustig zu. Auf einem schönen Predigen mit
And the Names Days were a really big thing.
They're the guys that were singing the songs, and they'd sing all the old German songs and harmonize beautifully. Then every once in a while the ladies would jump in, and there were some very good vocalists in the group, and they did a nice job of singing the old German songs. Of course, after all the homemade beer and the red eye, why they were happy.
Early Names Day celebrations in Catholic settlements in the United States provided frequent opportunities for groups to gather together socially and to sing the old folk songs. Although similar Names Day gatherings did not take place among the Protestants, many Volga Germans sang their folk songs at work or as part of their evening's entertainment.
Barn dances in the 20s and 30s were just a basic part of that whole environment. Cost men about 50 cents, but women got on free.
In the early years on the American and Canadian prairies, barn dances were held on Sunday nights, Sunday being the only day that they didn't put in a full day of work. Most barn dances were informal events, with local individuals or groups providing the music. In Colorado, Germans from Russia also danced in sugar beet shacks.
I had three uncles who actually started a dance band for a while, and it was an accordion, a trumpet, and drums. So they had the small dance band that played around in barn dances, and they kept it going until the uncle who owned the accordion had to sell it in order to buy a horse in the early 30s.
I played in mining camps and I played barn dances. In the fall you'd play a barn dance and it was cold. You could see your breath until a bootlegger came, or else the crowd warmed it up, you know. The pay was by the collection of the hat. And by the time you counted the nickels, pennies, and washers and tokens, $3 was a good night because people were working for $1 a day. You didn't have to advertise a shack dance, but on a Sunday afternoon you could go to the park in Loveland or in Greeley or in Windsor. These young people were all in the parks. And if you had a megaphone and tell them there'd be a shack dance tonight, oh, that spread like a forest fire.
There was usually one-man accordion. There was a lot of people that could play the accordion, but they didn't want to come out in public. They were afraid they didn't play good enough. But that was quite common, but it was good enough to play for a barn dance.
If you look in the areas of Colorado and Kansas and Wyoming and Nebraska, you will certainly Saturday night find a Dutch hop somewhere. People love the music. It is a lively, bouncy music. The polka is a bit more rapid, faster tempo than what you find in North Dakota or in South Dakota.
I think Dutch hop has its roots in the Volga area, and the reason I say that is because there was this fast hopser, this fast hop song. I've heard music from Russia, and it certainly sounds like Dutch hop. It's not quite the same thing. I think in America, the music is much faster, and again, I think is much more reflective of the fast-paced way of life of the irrigation farmers in the sugar beet country. But I would think that it emerged in the early 1900s.
At the very early stage, they didn't use an accordion much. They used two violins. One would play the lead and the other in kind of seconds, you know. And they had a dulcimer and then a cello with a bow. Well, when World War II started, the German newspapers had to quit printing, and you couldn't use that word German. Somebody thought up that word Dutch hop. I don't know who, But it worked. He advertised Dutch hop, and the dances continued. They still call it Dutch hop.
The instrument that is most interesting, of course, is the dulcimer, the hammer dulcimer, because you don't find it in the Black Sea Germans, you find it only in the Dutch hop music of the Volga Germans. It has a unique sound, it is Volga German, and it is something which really does distinguish German-Russian Volga music.
Most folklorists would argue that the hammer dulcimer was brought by the early Volga German pioneers to the Volga area and was reinforced by the Ukrainian dance groups that were there.
An old story is told about some of the first Volga dulcimer players, that they would have to kill one good piano in order to make one good dulcimer. The dulcimer tradition in America has become a very strong and unique custom.
It's a handmade instrument, and its strings tightened across wood, and you just tune each note to whatever that you need. They're just tuned in fifths on this side, and then this is tuned in the bass. Oh yeah, there's always favorites. There's Windsor Special, Under the Cottage Roof. We play for weddings, anniversaries, parties, whatever it is.
And it's characterized, I think, by an extremely fast polka, which has a characteristic ending. The Dutch hop is a two-step with two bounces, but it's done very fast, and it always ends with a thump and three distinct notes or three chords.
One of the most famous German-Russian musicians in America was band leader and television star Lawrence Welk, who was born in Strasburg, North Dakota.
Ladies and gentlemen and friends, would you mind if I would call on Joe to sing a song for you? Joe just told me a little while ago, he slept up there at John and Klein's home last night, and he just told me a little while ago that, Lawrence, in all my lifetime, I've never slept like I slept last night. He said, and I feel so good this morning, so naturally I have, I'm doing some wishful thinking that he will sing that way this morning. Joe, would you honor us, please?
An Irish song.
Well, Joe is Irish, and he wanted to know if you'd be willing to listen to an Irish song in this community. I would say they will listen to an Irish song. If you can sing in German, you'll go over better. But let's sing in Irish. As long as we know you don't sing in German.
Around the world.
How about Du liegst mir im Herzen?
One of the early North Dakota smaller dance bands, inspired by Lawrence Welk and imitative of his earlier style, was the Bubbling Quintet.
We played all over North Dakota, South Dakota. We played Fargo, Grand Forks, and come home at 6 in the morning, milk cows when I get home. Haul the kids to school.
We played mostly by ear. People were dancing like mad. We sometimes played 7 nights in a row without getting any nights off and having to do the chores. It was sometimes pretty tough. Every so often I'd lay beside the tractor wheel and rest for 10-15 minutes, then I was ready to go again. We used to make $8 to $10, $12 a night in the first years.
See, the most of them from the beginning were button accordions. Well, they were a little inferior. You couldn't play sharps and flats on them too much. It was a push and pull like a harmonica, blow and draw. Then the piano accordion came in, so they started to work on the piano accordion, and then finally they took over, you know.
Weddings, like funerals, were always important communal occasions. However, the traditions differed considerably among the various denominations. The actual wedding ceremony paled in comparison to the post-wedding festivities, which could be very elaborate. While Protestant weddings took place in one day, Catholic weddings could last from 1 to 3 days. During the early years, the wedding receptions were held in the home of the bride, including the meals and the dance. In those cases, dances could take place on the porch or inside the house, and people would take turns dancing. Wedding dances became standard in Catholic and Lutheran weddings, but did not find their way into all Protestant traditions.
The old-time weddings that they had down in Strasbourg, you got married in the morning and they start dancing about 9:30, 10 o'clock. And then they danced till noon, had dinner, big dinner. And after dinner, you played until 4 or 5 o'clock. They danced all afternoon. In the afternoon, there's probably a piano player and an accordion player that played all afternoon and all morning to the dances. And then in the evening, the full band would come and play for the entire dance from about 8 till 2 o'clock in the morning.
A variety of wedding reception traditions were brought along from Russia. The most elaborate are those of the Catholic Germans from Russia.
The Hochzeitsmarsch, which is the march that you played when the wedding party came in. The wedding dances, it was a short set of 3 dances that we played. First the bride and groom would dance, and then the best men and the bridesmaid would dance with the bride and groom, and they just switched around until all the wedding party had danced. And the final dance was with Mom and Dad. They both went in there and danced. Then after that, the whole wedding party was out there on the dance floor. And then the Tischmarsch was the one that you played them to the table. When they were all ready to sit down to eat, you went up to the wedding party and they all marched up there and they were all just kind of screaming and hollering and doing their thing to get them to the table. And that was another kind of a march. The Deutschmarsch was the one that you played them in when they come in late in the afternoon. Some people were just invited for the afternoon, for the supper part of it, so they would come to the door, and as soon as you did, if you were playing a waltz or a polka or whatever it was, you just stopped and you got off stage, went back there and played this old march that you marched them in. And usually the guy reached in his pocket and stuck $1 in your mouth or whatever it was for playing him in. Another march that you played where they went around with plates and went to all the people and they'd throw in quarter, 50 cents, or whatever they had in their change in their pocket. The first round was for the cooks, and then after that, the second round was for the musician. That's how we got paid. And then, of course, during the course of the day, when you played, a fellow would come up and give you $1, and he wanted to dance with the bride, and then he'd pay you $1, and then that was your pay for the day. In both the Volga German and Black Sea German traditions, it was common to sing narrative toasts to the wedding couple. Volga Germans referred to such a toast as a douche, offering advice on how to live a good married life, often humorously. Catholic wedding receptions also provided opportunities to sing folk songs. After they got a few beers and a few red eyes, they'd get together in some corner and the guys would start singing, and they'd sing at the weddings. That was a tradition. They were just always a group of guys singing. And then the ladies would join in, and they have probably the music would shut down, give the musician a little chance for a break. And then the guys would get together in the come corner and they just sing their hearts out. And of course, they dance the night away.
Ach nein, Herr König, gegen dir zertun mir ja nichts. Ich hab ja noch meinen Näherer, mein Bräutigam noch eher.
Like so many cultures in the past, the music of the Germans from Russia has played an integral role in their daily lives.
Mein Bräutigam noch eher. Großer Gott, wir loben dich.
The German-Russian traditions are barely surviving. You have to look very hard for them, but it is there, and it is a very vibrant tradition, but I look for it to die within the next few decades, primarily because the young people are not learning the German language. And you have to know the German language in order to support the traditions, both in religion and both in the folk tradition. As the German language disappears, so will these traditions.
Funding is provided by the North Dakota Council on the Arts, which receives funding from the state legislature and the National Endowment for the Arts. The North Dakota Humanities Council, a nonprofit, independent state partner of the National Endowment for the Humanities. Roger and Bernadine Lang Kuhn. Clarence and Marilyn Bauman. Thomas and Janice Huber Stengel. Michael M. Miller. The Germans from Russia Heritage Society. And the members of Prairie Public Television.
DVDs of A Soulful Sound, Music of the Germans from Russia, which contains bonus musical performances, are available for $29.95. CDs containing many of the performances featured on A Soulful Sound are available for $14.95. When you order both the DVD and CD, the price is only $39.95. Call the number on the screen or visit our website.